unpack some of the things that happened on Saturday, and we had a very festive, very fun-filled, packed weekend of really good games. Some teams really had a lot to lose in these games, and some didn't. Some were playing spoiler. Some teams were playing for pride. A lot of other teams were just playing toward planning towards next year. And the first game I want to talk about is the Miami Hurricanes. And as you know, you and I, we are Miami Hurricane fans. I mean, we follow the team. We've been following the team since the 80s when they had Howard Snellenberger and those great Hurricane teams of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And the Canes had a business trip to take care of. I didn't even look at this as a regular game. I looked at this as a business trip. Yeah. This was a must-win business trip that they were supposed to go up to Syracuse and handle their business, and they did not do that. And what I want to find out is what you took away from some of the things that happened in that game to cause Miami to lose this game and fall completely out of the top 10, the AP top 10 for college football, and they're not going to even play in the ACC championship, which they've never played in the ACC championship, right. Which to me is a travesty. It is an honest travesty. So my question to you is, give me some of your takeaways to this game that you thought could have made the difference to help Miami win this game and get back on that plane and come to Miami.
Wow. I'm thinking that Miami have a tendency to take people lightly, man. When they look at a team's record and they look at a team and don't see them playing up to par, it almost seems as if they just go in there and think they're guaranteeing a win. And that's not the case, because they jumped out in front like 21-0. And all of a sudden they had 21 unanswered points. And that's a lack of just saying, well, we got this thing in the bag. And you can't say you got anything in the bag until you see triple zeros on that time clock. I just despise the fact when a team just let up like that. I mean, how in the world can you give 3 unanswered touchdowns, man? And from seeing some play calling at the end where you kick field goal instead of going for the touchdown because you needed a touchdown to bring the score closer. And I just don't understand that those calls sometimes they make. The defense just totally this year been having difficulty maintaining a lead. So what I would suggest these guys, man, they got to get bigger, stronger. They got to gain tackle. They got to do all of these things above. And I think they got to start communicating too on the field. You got to be speaking to your teammates, saying, I got this person on my hand. You got to be kind of coordinating everything together, because you leave a man open because you ain't say nothing. You see a play you can read, you got to say something. Well, I got this guy who's going to screen. You call these plays out before they even develop and gain tackle these people. And so I could see those things are not being done because you got 3 unanswered. So, man, I'm disappointed, highly disappointed. Man, I was torn inside to see so much at stake, and they just dropped the ball on it, man. And now they totally out of the playoffs. And if you just think about the beginning of the season, how they was playing so good, and then they went this one little glitch where they shouldn't have lost to Georgia Tech. They actually, in all actuality, I think they're supposed to be undefeated right now, and then to be out of all of it. And switching over to a different division, I thought they was going to run the table when they got an AC, but they screwing it up, man. They never won it. And now
they have never won the ACC conference championship.
Man,
Never.
I thought they were going to run the table when they got in the ACC.
I thought they were too. When they left the Big East, I thought they were going to run the table in the ACC for sure.
Yeah, man. It's just disheartening to see such a beautiful season start out and just mental errors caused this thing to happen like that. And Christopher was on the podium saying that it was a collective loss, and him, starts with him and all this type of stuff. But that stuff get old, man, when you got something this high, and it means so much.
And the stakes were so high, right? I mean, the stakes was the highest ever of any stakes that I've been aware of for Miami. Just win one game. All they had to do was win one game, and they couldn't do that. You know,
and Syracuse never was a battle for the Canes back in the 80s. Man, they used to crumble Syracuse. Man, the third string players would be playing in the second quarter. I mean, it wasn't even a contest, man.
Syracuse had some good players back then. Donovan McNabb being the most notable player out of Syracuse.
And
when he played against Miami, those Miami teams, he played well, but he just wasn't up. I mean, to be able to overcome the type of team that Miami put on the field back then, I mean, it was just like night and day from now.
They too inconsistent to me, man.
It's consistency. I don't see an inconsistency to Miami's processes of winning. They looked really good the first half of the year against teams, and these were some pretty decent teams that they lined up and beat. Louisville was one of those teams. I mean, they beat quite a few good teams along the way, on the way to. All they had to do was win against Syracuse, and they just couldn't do it. I mean, Syracuse scored 21, as you said, 21 unanswered points in the third quarter. Now, how can that happen? It could happen a whole host of ways, correct? Either there is defensive breakdowns, there could be offensive breakdowns, there could be a combination of both, or they could be even special teams that's involved in that. And it seems to me, looking at the highlights, because I didn't watch the full game, it looks to me like Syracuse wanted it more than Miami did, if you think about it.
The mental breakdown. These guys just let these guys take that game. They took that game from them. They wanted it more. And that's one thing Cristobal got to instill in these guys. Man, you got to play until the finish. When that 0-0 go on that scoreboard, that's when the game is over. Other than that, you play hard all the way through, because you give these other teams just one momentum swing. It could be a interception or a fumble. It could totally change the dynamic of the game, and you would never get it back. And that's the way it happened with those guys, with the Canes. It's just unfortunate to me. I just hated to see this go down in this fashion, where now it's just like a miracle for them to get it in the playoffs, and I don't think it'll happen for them. And now, I mean, this was the first time in, I think, 10 years where they just had a decent quarterback, had a good core receivers, running back was intact, and they just laid an egg, man. And now I'm just eager to see who's going to replace Ward, and Screppo going to be gone, and all that stuff, where they had this magic between these receivers. And they didn't have that for 4 or 5 years, to have a good quarterback that you can totally rely on, versatile, can throw and they can run and get rid of the ball when he's supposed to. That was one of the things that plagued them for many years. And then they had that this year, and all of a sudden their heads full up like a freaking blimp, and they went up there and got beat. So, man, I'm just disappointed, man, because when you think of a team that should be there, and then they just lost their own way and lost these games where it just totally got them out of the running. And that's why I feel so hurt about it, because I just seen all the good potential that they could have, and that catapult over to next year when you have these teams like that. So, disappointing game.
That's right. They fell all the way from 6 down to 14.
Yep.
So Alabama actually jumped them and went 2 spots up at 9-3. So explain to me, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around how they snuck Alabama into the top teams when they lost 3 games the way they did. I don't get it. Help me understand that.
Well, Alabama got a following of people, and they got a lot of politics involved in that too. And they know one thing for sure: Alabama gonna put some rear ends in the seats wherever they go. So that can be playing a large part of that slot that they took, man, because Alabama definitely gonna have some fans go wherever they're gonna play. And it's just mind-boggling to know a team that lost 3 games in the fashion that they lost, and they still in the rankings to be in the playoffs. They just don't sit well with me for that. And I'm actually a fan of Alabama as well, but fair is fair. I don't think it's fair for them to be hanging around with a 3-loss on their record. So we'll see
So
how this thing pans out in the end.
right now, we're looking at 3 SEC teams that are in the top 12. Tennessee is sitting, or well, actually, I'll take that back. Texas is sitting at 2. Tennessee is sitting at 6, and Georgia's actually up there. Georgia's sitting at 5. So you got Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. I don't get it. You got 4 SEC teams in the playoffs. I mean, technically, you know, it's 5 for a playoff spot, and then you only have 2 ACC teams. If 2 ACC teams, just doesn't make sense to me.
The money grab, man. It
is a money grab, and it goes to show you where they think. I mean, when it comes to revenue, because it's all about the dollar and all about the revenue for, you know, filling these stadiums up, bringing the fan bases that teams like Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia and all of the rest of the big teams. Texas, of course, is another one. And, you know, I just think they got a lot of work to do with this CFP playoff system. They still have some work to do on it, and I'm hoping that they work toward that in the next coming years, because it's going to be important that they get this right eventually. They got to get this right, because if they don't get it right, it's going to always be somewhat of a conflict, because teams that belong there are not going to be there, and teams that might not belong there are going to be there. So that's a very unfortunate situation. Looks like Notre Dame has moved up as well after they defeated USC 49-35, and they don't even come from a conference. Notre Dame is not a part of a conference technically; they're independent. So it's going to be interesting to see where they land in the structure of the college playoff bracket when it's all said and done. You know.
Well, I tell you one thing. It's come a long way. It need to get tweaked a little bit more, but to see 4 games to 6 games down to 12, it's come a long way. Because you think these few teams that we were talking about that made that top 12, they would have been all out of gas, man, 5 years ago.
Oh yeah,
they would have had a prayer to play for anything with 2 losses. 2 losses, you're done. Your season is scrapped. In the garbage disposal. You will never see any one of these playoff or during show won't be talking about no national championship with no 3 losses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in your personal opinion, and this is just a question from me to you, which is the most disappointing game with Miami, University of Miami? Was it that game last year where they ran that dive play and the running back fumbled and Georgia Tech recovered the ball and marched down the field at Hard Rock, scored a touchdown? Or was it this game up in Syracuse, in your personal opinion?
I think the one last year was more, because that game, all you needed to do was take the damn knee, you know, and run the clock out. And they ran the ball instead. That one right there, man, you know, it was almost like your grandma said, you done something wrong, go get her a switch. And put that switch on your behind for making a call like that. They needed to get a switch and put it on Cristobal's rear end. I mean, so he get bruises on his butt for calling a stupid, idiotic play like that and lose that game. Man, it took almost half of the off season for me to say, okay, it was just a game, because it was so uncalled for. Why would you call something like that? That was a gift, man. It was a gift for Georgia Tech. They couldn't even imagine we're even getting the ball back. And not only that, they got the ball back and went down there and scored and won the game. They just knew they wasn't going to get the ball back.
Yeah.
But man,
I was most shocked when they scored after they got the ball back. But I'm going to say this game this year. And the reason I say this game this year, they had everything to lose. They had everything to lose riding on one game. And they dumped off and laid an egg on that one game. So that tells me that last year was equally as worse, but this year they lost everything by losing one game. Last year they weren't going anywhere. I mean, when they fumbled that ball away, technically. They weren't going to a playoff for sure. This year, they could have had an easy ride into the ACC championship to play SMU, and then they turned around and lost this game to Syracuse. And then majority of the loss was second half. They let Syracuse come back. So that's my 2 cents on that, to say the least.
Both of those games was disheartening.
Absolutely.
Last year's game was just pathetic. This game was it felt bad because you just seen the team that just let the dogs out of the window, just open the window, just let them fly out, man, because, you come into these guys' territory and not be hyped. You go in there and score 21 points where you just say, man, we're going to glide this thing in and just lose it because you go up 21 points and think these guys soften like they not trying to win this thing when you got 3 more quarters to play or 2 more quarters to play. That's a lot of time to be letting off, man. When you don't slack up, you don't slack up when no doggone 2 quarters left or 1 quarter left. You just don't do it. You apply on that pressure on them, man, and you just keep pounding it on them, man, and take the will of these people. But if you don't do that, these folks just one hit, one fumble, changed the whole pandemic. And
yes, that Restrepo fumble was, to me, that was a game changer in a way when that defensive back picked that ball up and started running the other direction with it untouched, technically for a touchdown. That seemed to let the win out of Miami in a lot of ways from the morale standpoint of view, because they lost. Syracuse picked up the momentum beyond that,
Yeah. One thing about football, you just continue to believe something positive will come out and you just make a play after play. Just take one play at a time. And next thing you know, you hit a touchdown. The next thing you know, you kick the ball off a guy, get anxious, he don't look the ball in, and he drops it, and you get the ball back. So that's 2 touchdowns within a minute. So you just can't let up, man. You just don't slack off, because if you do, you'll be looking at a damn loss behind your name, man. And that's what happened. And these guys get on there and come up with all of these sob stories and looking pitiful and stuff like that. And you just say, damn it, man, you just blew through it.
Exactly.
You've reached the end of another episode of the DC Stewart Sports Talk Podcast. Be sure to connect with us at Facebook and Twitter.com. Your voice is important, so head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Catch our next episode.